Hi everyone! Welcome to another tutorial video. In this series, we'll be diving into how to draw a human face with different expressions. In this first video, I'm going to show you how to portray a happy face with a grin or laughter. We will start with the topic of references, explore the basics of facial anatomy, observe simplified shapes and forms of facial features, discuss how to exaggerate certain lines for added expressiveness, and finally, I'm going to present the process of combining all these principles in a portrait drawing. Let's start by discussing the style and references that you can use to learn how to draw expressions. The scale of stylization can be shown on an axis, where one end represents highly synthesized and symbolic drawings, while the other represents hyper-realistic artwork. As artists, we have the freedom to choose where our style falls on this scale. When it comes to drawing a smiling mouth, we have various options. It can be depicted as a simple shape or as a photograph-like image. Personally, my drawings tend to lean towards realism, but I also incorporate a certain degree of simplification. This middle ground on the scale allows you to take inspiration from various sources, cartoons and their simplifications, as well as from photographs and real-life drawings. Today we'll be drawing from reference photos. However, animations have always been a tremendous source of inspiration for me. I highly recommend studying them if you wish to capture convincing emotions in your portraits. Incorporating simplification and exaggerated shapes known from animations can greatly improve the expressiveness of your drawings. It will broaden your artistic horizons and enable you to develop a unique approach to capturing emotions in your portraits. Alright, but now let's move to a more realistic reference and take a closer look at how the human face appears when grinding or laughing. We'll analyze its various features and delve into the basics of facial anatomy. We all have slightly different features, mimics, skin tones, and number of wrinkles, but at the same time we all have a lot in common as human beings. Noticing and understanding emotions in people's faces is a crucial skill when drawing portraits. It's important to know that almost all of us can learn to recognize subtle changes in facial expressions, even if it doesn't come naturally to us at first. Drawing face studies is a great way to develop this skill. So, what happens to the face when we smile or laugh? The most noticeable change occurs in the shape of the mouth and eyes. These are the main features that transform when someone smiles. However, it's important to remember that emotions are diverse and can involve other subtle facial cues. By not noticing and capturing these additional changes, the smile might not look as realistic. Many subtle changes happen underneath the skin, so let's focus for a moment on how the muscles of the face help us show happiness. While we use about 20 muscles to smile, the most important is to remember that when we smile or laugh, the muscles around our eyes, cheeks, and mouth are in action. The zygomaticus major is commonly referred as smiling muscle and is responsible for lifting the corners of the mouth. Orbicularis oculi is the muscle responsible for squinting the eyes. Levator labii superioris is responsible for lifting the upper lip, and risorius is responsible for widening the smile, so it's commonly used when we laugh. All these muscles work together to create the facial expressions associated with smiling, grinding, and laughing, and it's important to notice changes in their shapes and planes when drawing a realistic or semi-realistic portrait. Knowing the muscles beneath the surface can greatly assist us in accurately portraying facial expressions. If you find it challenging to draw the shape of the face when it's influenced by intense emotions, consider studying facial anatomy to familiarize yourself with these changes. While it's not mandatory, because you can rely on the careful observation of the reference photos or your model's expression, studying anatomy can provide a very valuable insight. Let's now have a look at the individual facial features and how they look with a big grin, starting with the eyes. The eyes reveal a wealth of emotion. When someone is genuinely happy, their eyes tend to crinkle at the corners, and the skin around them may show wrinkles or crow's feet. Smiling eyes often have less visible irises. When we laugh, the cheeks lift up, pressing the lower eyelids and partially covering the irises from below. Sometimes the eyes may squint or even close when laughing. It's important to remember that not all smiles or grins are the same. To capture the true essence of a smile and seize that special moment, it's essential to observe all these subtle details. I will show you now a few examples of eye drawings to demonstrate the different ways the eyes can appear when people smile or laugh. Let's start with a subtle smile. It may be challenging to notice changes in the eyes during a gentle smile because they are not very clear, but we can still include them in our drawing. In this example, you can observe that the lower part of the iris is slightly covered, which already gives us a hint that the cheek is lifted, so the person is probably smiling. The lower eyelid becomes more bulged, and with shading we can emphasize it even further to show that it's more convex than usual. You can see that wrinkles appear on the side of the eye, which is also helpful in communicating expression in drawing happy-looking eyes. The eyebrow appears relaxed and slightly raised. Remember to not draw the eyebrow too close to the eye or to the middle of the face, because the expression might look more sad or angry. In the second case, the changes are also very subtle. The gaze is directed to the side and slightly upward, allowing the iris to be visible without being covered from below. Delicate lines under the eye suggest raised cheeks, and the lifted and rounded eyebrow indicates a cheerful mood. In portrait drawing, the character's body language is also important, even if we don't draw the entire body. A tilted head in a laughing expression can perfectly enhance this emotion, and the position of the eye in this drawing suggests such movement. That's why it's important to think about the very subtle nuances you can notice on the reference, even when they are not directly connected with drawing eyes or smiling lips, because even the position of the head and other elements of body language can add expressiveness to your portrait. Moving on to the third example. The changes become more pronounced as the eye squints. In this situation, you only need to draw the middle part of the iris, since the upper and lower parts are covered by the eyelids. The whites, iris and pupil will not have clear and detailed features as they are in the shade now. It's important not to draw them too precisely, as elements in the shade lack clear details. Instead, a shaded area with subtle shapes will be enough. During intense laughter, tears may appear in the eyes, which can be gently added above the lower eyelid with an eraser. Adding a small sparkle of light in the shaded eye emphasizes this glowing effect and adds a charming look to the laughter. I really like it and use it even if I can't see such highlights on the reference. The last example depicts a closed eye, as we often close our eyes when we laugh. Drawing a closed eye primarily involves capturing the folds of the eyelids, the wrinkles around the eyes, and the slightly bent eyelashes under the pressure of tightly closed eyes. Closed eyes can be relatively easier to draw since they have fewer details, but they can still pose challenges. Remember to rely on your reference and observe what you actually see. In sketching, sometimes less is more, so avoid over-rendering these simple shapes and focus on their overall appearance. Let's now move to the nose. The nose and nostrils can also provide cues about emotions. For example, When someone is smiling, the nose tends to remain relatively relaxed. But when the smile is very wide, the nose will stretch a little bit at the sides because it is pulled by the muscles that stretch the mouth. It can also be lifted and slightly wrinkled at the top. Seeing only the nose would not necessarily tell if the person is smiling, but if we do not notice subtle changes in it and draw a large smile with completely relaxed muscles around the nose, the smile will not look very convincing. In this drawing, you can see that the nostrils are slightly stretched to the sides and nasolabial folds start to appear next to them. So even though that the nose isn't the most important feature when you capture a smile, remember to not ignore subtle changes that appear in it. So now let's move to the most difficult feature. Drawing the mouth is probably the most common problem in drawing a portrait with a big smile. A large number of elements, teeth, lips, and tongue, actually makes the process more difficult and quite long. But don't worry, because it can be broken down into baby steps. First, we're going to draw an example from 3/4 with only the top arch of the teeth visible. Let's begin with a simple approach. Start by drawing the outline of the entire mouth. Then, divide it into approximately 4 equal parts. These parts include the top lip, the area for the teeth with gums, this section for the visible tongue, and bottom lip. Additionally, mark the vertical central line of the mouth. In a 3/4 view, this line will be slightly shifted to the side. I like to not only mark the center line, but also use it to follow the cross contours of the different planes. For instance, you can observe that the line on the top lip will bend to emphasize its rounded surface, while it remains straight at the teeth where the plane appears flat. Now you can proceed to a slightly more detailed drawing. Count the number of teeth you can see in the picture and divide the arch with the teeth into the same number of sections. Keep in mind that the first 2 teeth at the front will be slightly larger than the other ones. Also remember to maintain symmetry in relation to the central line. Mark the teeth gently. If you take inspiration from animations, you might have noticed that cartoon characters often have a tooth arch without distinct divisions for individual teeth. That's because in real life our eyes tend to overlook such details. When we look at someone, we see a glimpse of whiteness in their smile, the general shape of the teeth. So including excessive detail would make the drawing appear unnatural. In the next step, focus on the shadows visible in the reference photo to create the illusion of depth and dimensionality. The tongue is positioned inside the mouth, so it will be in the shadow. The same applies to the gum line beneath upper lip and the corners of the mouth. Gradually add shadows, starting with medium tones and progressing to darker ones. Smiling lips appear stretched and smooth, so it's important to create a smooth texture. You can also use a finger to blend. As you can see, I depict the teeth as a white arc in the drawing. However, where the arc curves and disappears in the corners of the mouth, there is less light, so I add some soft shadow there. It's important to notice that even though the teeth are white, they also have their form and will be darker when they are in the shadow. Don't forget about it, otherwise they will look too flat. Now begin adding darker values to your drawing gradually and focus on the areas where the reference shows the darkest tones. Remember to consider the different planes of the mouth. It's a common mistake to only include a shadow inside the mouth, but don't forget that the visible tongue also has a distinct shape and smooth surface, so it will have lights and shadows in specific areas. Including convincing planes to it will make the sketch more realistic. Pay attention to how I not only draw the mouth itself, but also include subtle lines at the sides to depict the wrinkles that appear around the lips when we smile. It's crucial to remember that even when we draw just an eye, nose or mouth, they are always a part of the face. Next, let's move to a less obvious example, with the top teeth partially covered by the bottom lip. Start the same way. Draw an outline of the entire mouth and then divide it into parts you can see on the reference. In this case, you can divide the mouth into two parts, upper and lower, and then divide upper part in half. These lines are wavy, so they are a bit more difficult to capture. It took me a while to properly draw them. Take your time and try to recreate the curves you can see. On the lower lip, you can mark two ovals that will help you draw the full volume of the bottom lip and maintain the symmetry. Now you can divide the horizontal middle section into the number of teeth. In this case, we can only see the upper arch of this tooth line, and its lower edge is covered by the lower lip. As you can see, it's not the usual smile shape that you would see in animations. It's more unique. Studying such smiles is crucial in realistic art and helps to capture the likeness of a person by noticing their unique characteristics. Lastly, let's draw a laughing mouth from a side profile, where both the upper and lower arches of the teeth are visible. The process follows the same rules. Start by outlining the entire mouth and then divide it into sections for the teeth, tongue and lips. This example may be a bit more challenging, as you can also see the inner part of the tooth arch. That's why I've simplified it to a block shape. This way, you can easily identify the main turning edges and divide it into sections to mark the individual teeth and how they are placed on these planes. Remember to draw very lightly first to be able to correct your mistakes and move lines if you need it. Then gradually add stronger lines and values. The shade inside the mouth is quite strong, so don't draw too many details there. Planes of shadows are enough. For more precise lines or sharp edges of shadows, you can use a mechanical pencil. When both tooth arches are visible, it's important to show that the upper one is larger and overlaps the lower one, which is especially visible in this side profile view. And that's all! I hope this process has been helpful and will make it easier for you to draw smiling expressions with an open mouth. Remember that it's important to interpret emotions in a face holistically, taking into account all the facial cues and body language. To accurately show this emotion in a convincing, realistic way, you shouldn't focus only on the mouth or eyes, but on the whole anatomy, position of the features, and their changed shapes. So now let's move on to drawing the whole face with a grinding expression. When I draw the entire face, I follow the same approach as when I draw just an eye or mouth. I begin by sketching the overall outline. I add a vertical central line to ensure symmetry, which here is slightly tilted. It's usually not perfect at the start, but since I use a pencil, any errors can be easily corrected. Next, I outline the eyes, nose, and mouth. These features are not always perfectly in place, especially if I haven't warmed up or haven't drawn in a while. That's okay though, because I use light lines and a hard HB pencil. To capture proportions, I observe the relationships between the features. For instance, I note that the corners of the smiling mouth align with the center parts of the eyes. While it doesn't need to be a perfect alignment, it's better to slightly exaggerate the stretch of the lips for a more expressive smile. Don't hesitate to slightly overemphasize certain aspects. So if the eyes appear squinted, I might depict them even squintier to enhance the effect and intensify the drawing's expression. As I progress, I gradually add more detail and darker lines, but I also pause at times to erase any excess lines. A kneadable eraser can be handy for this task, because it helps to keep a cleaner and more organized drawing. If you draw lightly, you can repeat this process several times without damaging the paper. When it comes to drawing facial features, I follow the same rules as I demonstrated before. However, the challenge lies in drawing the face's shape and planes without emphasizing too many wrinkles or sharp lines, especially for a young person's portrait. Therefore, I strive to represent curves through soft and subtle shading. For example, I shade the rounded and lifted cheeks that accompany a smile, and I also shade the dimples that appear in this particular smile. The goal is to achieve very gentle and smooth tonal transitions. If the person would be older and had visible wrinkles, I would use more sharp lines. If you struggle with drawing expressions, try to draw people of different ages, because drawing older people is often easier to start with because of their more obvious characteristics. In this drawing, I acknowledged that the eyes might be slightly too far apart, but I decided to keep them as it suits the young, feminine and rounded face. I draw the hair in a simple, symbolic way, with just a few lines. It allows the focus to remain on the clear expression visible on the face. That's all! I hope you enjoyed the drawings, and I hope these tips will be helpful for you. Make sure to practice such studies regularly, using different references and styles to improve your skills. Hope to see your studies of smiling and laughing people. Happy doodling and stay tuned for the next parts of this tutorial. Bye!